If you're curious to hear a little music from our guest Carla Lucero, who we spoke to in our most recent episode, check out E4TT's annual concert of music by women and non-binary composers, Midnight Serenades, on January 25th. Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists, sponsored by a grant from the California Arts Council. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we continue our conversation with Novaa, who we spoke to in July 2021. Your work has been described as combining avant-garde music with electronic music, Taoism with Afro-Caribbean roots, and exploring meta-themes of nature, spirituality, Afrofuturism, and self-exploration. Could you talk about your creative process and your inspiration?
I would say my path it's different from the litany of composers in a sense where I am not classically trained and I haven't. I would say the honest truth is forced, but I really enjoyed it. I was forced to watch films from my mom's childhood. So I watched a lot of films from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and basically stopped at the 60s. And from that, I took in a lot of music. I remember the very first time I fell in love with Herman Bernard's piece, Love Scene d'Amour for Vertigo. Mm-hmm. And I just remember these moments from listening to funk music, 60s music, all these music. I my dad and I were jazz heads. You know, we go to the jazz club and we're the ones bopping our heads, you know, to every rhythm the drum is doing, right? So with that said, I feel like I've been studying music all my life, honestly. And I take these influences, I feel, and I bring them along with me. And so I would say, well, like with the Taoist perspective, it's really about being one with the creative process, being fully present when creating, and also allowing contrast to come very, very easily. When it comes to like the Taoist perspective or kind of this meditative quality of sound, I feel like I pick up influences from Toru Takemitsu because I first learned of him through his book, and later after that discovered his sound, which is incredible. Yeah, but what I love about him is he wrote about this, but he also put it into practice. His use of silence. To me, it's so profound how he does it. And I also feel like the absence of sound is, I don't know if it's something that's more used in Eastern lifestyle, but to me it was a refreshing difference from kind of the music I grew up with, which was from classic rock to disco. But it's about sound, and it's not about allowing a rest to linger. You know, it's yeah. So I would say it's just, for me, I'm not sure I'm answering your question correctly, but these people that really spoke to me, and I guess these influences are my favorite composers, particularly Harold Budd, Alice Coltrane. I remember I discovered Alice's Coltrane, her work rather recently. I'd never been into her jazz work. I mean, I like her jazz, but it's pretty traditional, and that period right after John Coltrane's death, when she was experimenting with harp and jazz, I think that's cool, but to me, that's not the meat and potatoes. To me, it's when we go further, where she's really doing her own thing, and you could tell that she's just so free and doesn't care about fitting into a particular group or genre. Even I was reading the album notes for one of my favorite songs called Roziht, and I saw that I think she had like seven violins, like 2 cellos, and like maybe one viola, something completely very unusual, a combination of strings, but you could also hear that. You can hear this kind of piercing, high-pitched sound. And the beautiful thing about it was that it was purposeful. And, in contrast that to me learning all these theory books about, the balance between the instruments and all these things that are also important, but to really see people go out and find their own way of expression, and to be unafraid of that. To me, it's very fascinating. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like my influences, honestly, they come from everything I've picked up so far, and particularly like Handel. I love Handel the most out of composers from that era, and from him, I really love the way his intervals. He'll go up a fourth and then come down a minor or major second, and I just like that he skips like that, or he'll go up a sixth and then come down a second or a third or something like that. And it's just like these things, I don't know, you pick it up and you all, eventually you have your own sound. but if it's about who am I and how am I going to really express myself in the most authentic way, I feel like I'm still chiseling out the sculpture of who I am, and being inspired and emboldened by other composers. Particularly, I listened to a Meredith Monk thing because she inspires me, and then I started just listening to her discography on Spotify, and kind of like Rothko, I have a couple favorite pieces which I love, but for the most part, Rothko, I don't get the blue with the black colors, but he has some really nice pieces, and I felt like for her, it's like she had some pieces that really spoke to me, and there's some pieces that were intriguing and creative, but not really of my interest. But those pieces are the ones that said, "Wow, Shannon, look at how Meredith found her voice by having these odd vocal ranges and sounds and tones. And what if you could do something like this in your way?" So it would not be with using voice in that way, but it's the idea that she found something that was hers and something she connected with. And that admires me so much.
Do you think it's important to have role models that look like oneself?
Absolutely. I really think so. And I say this mainly because I hear a lot of people explaining how important that is to see people who look like them in a particular space. And for me, I just, as long as you're human and you're doing something, I immediately think I have the ability to do it. So it doesn't matter, what sex or gender or color you are. But I will say that I go out of my way because given, if we look at the disparities, let's say, of Black composers, or disparities of any other non-white composer in the Western hemisphere, It's obviously because of the disparities in other aspects. It's not yet an equal opportunity to either get the music education or the exposure or whatnot. So I think that also like support family to support community to the resources. So I feel like when I do see people of color who are composers and they're out there essentially doing or trying to do what I am doing, which is self-expression and art creation, I'm going to support it regardless. To me, as long as it's authentic, I'm going to be there. And I do know how important it is for other people to see role models. I mean, whether it's, I hear women talk about how it's important for them to see women in leadership at companies and so forth, or to be people of color and a professor role. So I support it. For me, it's also inspiring. It's inspiring. But I have to say, like, it's never been where I felt like I couldn't accomplish anything because there wasn't a Black woman. But that is to say, if there is one, even all the better.
Thank you for listening to For Good Measure, and a special thank you to our guest, Novaa, for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at www.e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible in part by a grant from the California Arts Council and generous donors like you. For Good Measure is produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to audio engineer extraordinaire Stephanie Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts and tune in next week for Good Measure.